channel. Thank you guys so much for being patient. I was supposed to upload this video yesterday. Tuesday was a crazy day. I let you guys know on social media what was going on. It was kind of a crazy day. So I was not able to film this video until Wednesday, and now it's going up on my channel on Thursday. So I want to thank you guys so much for your patience, and I really love you guys. You guys are always super, super supportive. So today we are playing around with the new Pat McGrath palette. This is the Mothership number 5, the Bronze Seduction palette. You guys, this palette is everything. In my opinion, this is the prettiest of all the Mothership palettes. That's my opinion. And as you can see, the packaging is so well built. This is like luxury. It just, it's heavy too. I have a lot to say about this new palette from Pat McGrath. So let's get into a little bit of information on it, and then we'll move straight into the video. So this palette is $125. It says that it's a palette of 10 richly pigmented shades and 5 next generation formulas that come together to fashion your most fixating looks for luxury at your fingertips. My first palette that I've ever bought from the Pat McGrath is this one. This is the Bronze Ambition palette. I just got this one a couple weeks ago. So I have a fellow YouTuber. She has a small channel like me. I absolutely love her to death. Her channel is SOLSTICE Beauty by Jessica. I love Jessica. She's the sweetest. She had told me about how amazing the Pat McGrath palette was. And then I had a subscriber. His name is Ryan, and he had a ton of Pat McGrath palettes. And he was swatching them all and sending them to me. And the more that I've seen those swatches, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I need one of those in my life. And so I went ahead and ordered this one. But what was crazy is Jessica and Ryan both told me on the exact same day about the Pat McGrath quality that I needed one in my life. So I was like, okay, I've had 2 people today, 2 tell me that I need a Pat McGrath palette in my life. So I went ahead and ordered this one from Sephora, and I was really excited to get it in, and I explained to you my first experience with this palette. Once I used this one and started kind of understanding how to use their formula because it's so pigmented, I went ahead and ordered this one, which is the new one from Pat McGrath. So I have a lot to say about this palette, so without further ado, let's jump right into the video showing you guys how I created this look that I tried and attempted to recreate from Instagram, but you know how that goes. And yeah, I will see you guys in a little bit. So let's start playing around with this palette. This is how it comes. This is what the actual box looks like. And you kind of pull on the string, and then you open it up, and the palette is inside. This palette is luxurious, and it's heavy, and it feels amazing. The only thing I don't like about it is fingerprints. I don't like fingerprints. Fingerprints drive me crazy. Check out that mirror, you guys. See how pretty that mirror is? Woo! This is my first Mothership palette, and this is officially the most I've ever spent on a palette ever in a day in my life. Now, I did get 10% off because I did order it the day that it launched. And if you ordered it within a certain time frame, the day that it launched on the Pat McGrath website, you could get 10% off. So I did get 10% off. It did take a while for it to ship, but it doesn't have a protector protecting the shadows, which that's kind of a bummer because I'm all about having a protector for my shadows. You know, some people, like if you go through all my palettes, I would say 98% of my palettes have their protector sheets in them. I'm kind of a nut about keeping them in there. It just is what it is. But I am very excited to dive into this palette, and I do have some tips on, you know, my experience with the Pat McGrath palettes and what I've struggled with using the other one that I have, which I'll explain throughout the tutorial. There are 3 matte shades in this palette. You have the light, the dark, and this purple. After I ordered this palette, I was scrolling through Instagram a couple of days ago, and this picture popped up. I will pop it right here. That eye look is absolutely beautiful. They used the Mothership 5 palette for that eye look, so that is what I'm wanting to recreate today. Don't get me wrong, mine is not going to be near that beautiful because I'm not a makeup artist. Whoever created that knows what they're doing, but I'm going to do my very, very best to try to attempt to recreate that eyeshadow look. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Morphe E28 brush, and I'm going to go into the lightest shade right here, and that's the lightest matte shade in the palette, and I'm just going to lightly start building. Now, as you will know, the Pat McGrath palettes are extremely pigmented, you guys. I've never used a palette quite like a Pat McGrath palette, so I'm definitely learning how to use the formula. So to quickly go into it, I bought this one. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership Sublime Bronze Ambition palette. This is what it looks like right here. It is so beautiful. But when I first started playing with it, I was applying it like I would any other palette, not realizing just how pigmented these shadows are. And sometimes they're so pigmented that you can kind of lose the look. Like you can, as you keep building, sometimes you just kind of lose control of the look. I first tried this palette, I wiped it off and put it on and wiped it off and put it on at least like 3 times. And I've realized, you know, I've started to understand the formula a little bit better. So I think that's kind of the thing with a Pat McGrath palette. You really need to learn the formula. So when you first go into it, if you've never used one, go in with a very, very light hand. Kind of work your way up. Don't go in and just put a bunch of color on there and think you're going to be able to blend it out easily because it's very pigmented. There is good things about very pigmented shadows and there's bad things. Once you get used to the pigmentation, you can create a look so stinking fast. It will like be amazing. But if you're used to palettes that are not as pigmented and you have to build, then you're really going to struggle with switching to something like this. So these are probably the best quality shadows that I've personally used, but you really have to like navigate your way through learning how to apply those shadows and have them blend and marry each other very well. So this is the first coat, and see, I went in very lightly because I don't want to lose control of this transition shade, because once you go in with that darker shade, you can lose control of it quickly. And then because the darker shade is so pigmented, it's going to be hard to get it back. When you're using a normal palette with normal quality, you can pop that transition shade back over top to bring it back to life. With this, I haven't been able to do that because they're so pigmented that you just have to go in very, very lightly. Take your time until you learn the formula. So I'm going to go back in for another dip, and I'm going to put this on the crease and just kind of work that in. Now I'm going to kind of move it around all around because I do want it to kind of come up in here. In that picture, she did kind of come up, you know, real high up into here. But I am going to switch to a smaller brush. This is my Jaclyn Hill 40 brush from the Morphe collection. It's just the same as the M506. And I'm going to go into that lightest brown shade, and I'm going to just kind of place this where I want it and really perfect this shade before I move in with the dark. Typically, you can put a transition color down and then go in with your dark, and then they just kind of blend together. I haven't found that to be the case for me with these Pat McGrath palettes, but it takes a minute to learn how to use them. So now I kind of have the transition shade looking the way I want it. I'm going to go in one more time, and I'm really going to build up that outer, like this outer ring around this look, and really perfect this before I move on to that darker shade. Now I'm just taking my M504 and just kind of blending that in. And I like to take the side of my brush and just lightly kind of feather it. Okay, now that I have the transition shades done, now I'm going to take that smaller brush, the 40 from Jaclyn Hill Morphe, and I'm going to go into this shade right here. I'm basically carving out my brow bone right here, just carving that out. As you will notice as I'm doing this, I'm working in sections. So right now I'm working in this section, and now I'm going to go in for a second dip, and I'm going to work in this section. But before I move on, because I have that shadow laid down, I'm going to go in with my 33. It's from the Morphe Jaclyn Hill collection. It's more of just like a shading brush. It looks like this, and it kind of has a little bit of a point to it. The reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want to bring this shadow up where I have the transition shade. I want to blend that shadow out, but I want to keep it in the crease. So I'm basically going to just start buffing this and spreading it down, but without bringing it up. gonna go take the smaller brush and I'm gonna go in right here on this outer corner. Going in with that brush and blending that out. Now, I'm sure any technique that you have found to make the Pat McGrath shadows blend beautifully, I mean, keep doing what you're doing. But for me, this is what I have found that works best, how I create a look. So now I'm just kind of taking that smaller brush with no product on it and I'm kind of lifting up that shadow just a little bit. That's what's amazing about the Pat McGrath shadows, is they're so pigmented that you can move them around and place them where you want it, but you just got to be very careful because you'll lose that transition shade and you won't get it back. That is the other thing that I love about these Pat McGrath palettes. So far, I have noticed that I don't get any fallout. Before I continue, I am going to make sure that everything matches. So I'm going to take my mirror and bring it to my chin, and I'm going to look down, and I'm going to go in and make sure that everything matches before I continue. I'm going to take this brush from the Morphe Jaclyn Hill collection. This is the 41 brush. And I'm going to go into this gold shade right here. It's so gorgeous. And I'm going to pack it on both sides of my brush. And then I'm going to spray it. This shadow, this gold shadow, is very glittery and it's very gritty. Normally with a gritty type shadow like that, sometimes you'll just get a ton of fallout. But with this one, I've got nothing, like absolutely no fallout. So you could totally use a glitter glue to press this down, or you can totally just use your finger. I want to take this brush from the Morphe Jaclyn Hill collection. This is the 39, and I'm gonna go into this shade for the inner corner highlight. Spray it. It looks like she kind of has it sprayed, like the inner corner highlight kind of goes into that gold. So I'm gonna go back into this brush. I've wiped it off. I'm gonna go into that first shade, spray it down, and then kind of bring it into that gold. So now I want to do the brow bone with that shade. So I'm taking the Morphe 42 brush. I'm going into that first shade in the palette, the light one, and I'm going to press this in here. The outer corner, I'm going to take this brush. This is the 40, okay, the smaller one. I'm going to go into this dark purple, but I'm going to mix between these two. So I'm going to dip my brush into both of these just so that I don't get an explosion of that dark purple on that outer corner. So I'm just going to start packing this. And then I'm going to take that one shader brush that I was using, the 33, and just kind of blend this in, but I don't want to go past that brow bone, so I'm keeping it right here. I just know that they are so pigmented that I do not want that explosion of that purple on that outer corner, because again, you can lose it fast. You can lose control of the look really quick with a Pat McGrath palette. For those of you guys that have been using the Pat McGrath palettes for a while, you guys are probably pretty well got it down. Like, you guys pretty well have got it figured out. But for me, I'm just learning. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, this is a very pigmented palette. I'm going to take this brush from Sigma, the E30, and I'm going to go into this shade, and then I'm going to go into this shade. So I'm basically going to bring this down around here. Now I'm going to go into that second dark color. It's called Disobedient. And I'm placing that as close to the lash line as I can get it. The only thing that's throwing me off is this inner corner shade right here. As you can see, it's really, really light. This one, I thought for sure that's what they used, but you guys, this isn't as light as I thought it was. When you blend it out, it kind of turns into a dark yellow. I might put something a little bit lighter of my own on top of this. So maybe I'll take some of this from Kylie Cosmetics. This is in the shade Santorini, and maybe I should pop this on the inner corner. Now, the Santorini is so pigmented that you don't need to wet it down. I think that looks a lot better in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, go off camera. I'm going to put some lashes on and I will come back and we'll swatch it for you guys and I will give you guys my final thoughts on the palette. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. I went ahead and threw on some House of Lashes. This is in the style Knockout. Based on that picture, they were not real long lashes. They were kind of short but kind of fluffy. And so that's why I chose these lashes to kind of match that look. And then as far as my lip goes, I put on the KKW Beauty Nude Lip Liner number 2. No shock there. And then I also threw on this from Girlactik Beauty. This is in the shade Playful, and it is their matte liquid lipstick. And this is what the shade looks like. It's so perfect for this look. Like, it's so pretty. So I swatched the palette for you guys so you guys could see what this beautiful palette looks like. So starting from here, this is called Skin Show Divine Glow. This is Entrapment, Bronze Blaze, Rose Gold 005, VR Fire Opal, Extreme Aubergine, I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce that, Guilty Pleasure, Disobedient, Blitz Flame, and Astral Luna Gold. So that is what the palette looks like swatched. It is so beautiful, you guys. This shadow in particular, so if you look at it straight on, it looks green, but like if I look down on it, it looks purple. So it kind of shifts. And it has a very, very unique, beautiful, beautiful shade. Very well thought out and well created, well formulated. I will say that gold, if you have a hooded eye, you're gonna want to use a glitter glue. I don't have a hooded eye, so I didn't really need to use the glitter glue, but if you do have a hooded eye, you're gonna wanna use a glitter glue with that because it will transfer. I haven't had any issues with it transferring, and I've had it on for a while now. I've had it on for probably 2 hours. So just FYI, that might be something you want to consider if you have hooded eyelids. So let's jump right into how I feel about this palette. These are the first 2 palettes I've ever bought from Pat McGrath. And like I stated earlier, it does take a little bit of playing around with the shadows to really understand how to work with them. They're so pigmented that sometimes you can kind of lose the shadows in with themselves. If this is the first palette that you buy from the Pat McGrath, go in it with just practice before you go to bed. I would take off all my makeup and I would just practice and kind of get to know the shadows before you go in with trying to do an eyeshadow look. That's what I recommend if you're a first-time Pat McGrath user. Personally, now out of all of the Mothership palettes, I think that this one, in my opinion, is the prettiest. When you look at it online, you think that it's all warm tones, but let me say, it is not. There are some warm and cool tones in the palette, and in my opinion, I kind of feel like this right up here is more of a neutral tone. So it can pull warm or cool depending on how you want to apply it and what colors you mix with it. But the duochromes in this palette are absolutely stunning. The shimmers are absolutely beautiful. And they are so pigmented that it's absolutely unbelievable. But like this one right here, this red one right here, I mean, you guys, let me just show you what this looks like. I'm going to swatch it once. You get such instant payoff from that shade. It's absolutely insane. I am blown away by this palette. I'm blown away by how luxury it feels. When I first got this Bronze Ambition palette, I struggled with this. Now, let me just tell you what, I do love this palette. This palette is really, really pretty, and I'm working on creating a video using this palette. This palette is very, very pretty, you guys, but I struggled that first time I used it. I kept wiping it off and going back in and kept wiping it off, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But I slowly began to realize that these are so pigmented that you really have to understand the pigmentation, understand how to blend out that much pigmentation. Once you start figuring that out, you guys will definitely love it. Now, personally, I like both of these. I do. I mean, this one's a little bit cheaper. This one is $55 and you get 6 shadows. This one, you get 10 shadows for $125. I am very glad that I have both of these in my collection because even with these two together, I think I could create really, really good, beautiful looks with it. The packaging is just unbelievable, you guys. Like, this is a hard case. I just wish it didn't have the fingerprints. I can see why Pat McGrath is so well loved. You know, I've done a little bit of research on Pat McGrath, and not only is she absolutely stunning, but her talent is on a whole other level. I can see why Vogue magazine called her one of the most influential makeup artists in the world, because she is definitely on another level of talent. And these shadows are absolutely stunning, and I'm so glad that I have a Pat McGrath. I have 2 palettes now in my collection, and I think that this is probably the beginning of a very expensive addiction or collection. There are other Pat McGrath Mothership palettes, but for me personally, I like this one the most. If you guys want to get this palette but you can't afford it, Pat McGrath has a program similar to what Morphe has now, that you could do 3 interest-free payments through a company called Affirm. The 3 payments would be $42 a piece. So that is a way to pick up this palette if you can't afford the $125 off the bat. I definitely recommend that if this is a palette that you've been wanting to get. Now, in my opinion, do I think that this palette is necessary? Absolutely not. None of this makeup's necessary. Do I think it's absolutely worth the money? Yes. And I never thought that I would say a palette would be worth $125, but this palette really is. So that is what I have to say on that. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for your patience. And don't forget to come right back here tomorrow and Saturday. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing Foundation Friday, and Saturday I'm going to be reviewing the new KKW Beauty Classic Blossom Palette. So Friday is Foundation Friday. Saturday is the new collection from KKW Beauty. I love you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend filled with love, happiness, and joy. I love you guys so much. Bye!